Hi, everyone. We want to thank you for participating today. This is the second to last session that we'll have in this series. We'll have another one at the last week, the last Tuesday in April. And I know that there's been some conversations and some other work that's been ongoing, and I'll let Stephanie and Evelyn talk about it. But wanted to go ahead and hand off, I think, to Stephanie, and we'll get started. I'm glad to have everyone here today.
There we go. Trying to find the unmute button there. Glad you all could join again today. Just like Robert said, today is our kind of second to last echo session. And today we're going to go over the facet of hardiness, which really taps into a lot of different facets that we've already talked about. And then we'll get to it at the end too with more information, but just to kind of announce broadly to let it kind of start percolating in your mind that on our off weeks when we don't meet as a echo group, that I am offering more individualized resilience huddle sessions. If there's any, like a particular student you need help with, particular, trying to take time for yourself to practice these on your own. It's definitely a group welcome for all comers, and just kind of with anything that you want to discuss and need more one-on-one help with. We're definitely there on kind of Tuesdays, same exact time, just on the non-echo weeks. And we'll definitely planning on continuing that throughout the summer too. I know some of you might be involved in schools in the summer, or maybe you just want more, more support for yourself too over the summer. That we're definitely here to help you however you might want help. All right. So just to jump into things, thanks again for introducing yourselves in the chat. If any questions come up, or things that don't quite make sense, or things that you found that work for you, definitely feel free to interrupt us and share that. So again, just, again, we can't do it without you. Definitely we really appreciate, just as a group, the support from our teams, the communities, our partners, and all those who help support us as well. Again, I know this is a theme throughout, and especially I think it's really important to think about and kind of reflect on, just given our pandemic state for the past year, right? That grit, or our ability to bounce back from things, it really hinges on that ability to live life like a marathon and not a sprint, right? We're not trying to sprint towards a finish line. These are the facets that we talk about, are not things that are the goals perfection, right? We don't want to become a perfectionist. It's all about having those tools in our toolbox that we can turn towards to help kind of, alleviate some of the distress that we're going through, right? Make maybe life more meaningful to a certain extent. All right, so this is a new source or a new resource out there that we actually found when we were looking at some other projects. And this is something that I wanted to share with you all, and the link is in the slides. We can definitely figure out how to share the checklist as a document too. But this is really helpful just in terms of ways to reflect on how to start the day, utilizing it within classroom transitions, maybe when you all are going to start your day. Just like we know from other facets, right? That ability to kind of reflect on how things are going, maybe some of the positives, reflect on what we're thankful for. Those are all really powerful interventions in terms of minimizing our own distress. And so things like, maybe as you start your shift or during lunch, right? Or even getting kiddos to think about as we transition from one thing to another, right? Like, what brings me joy? Or, what am I most grateful for today? Also the idea of being more mindful or in the moment and trying to set an intention with your shift too. So, or the class of the day. So, trying to think about is there a certain quality or strength I want to connect with today? What do I need to do in order to connect with that specific quality or strength? And the language, of course, can be adapted for the age level that you're working with, or even just the audience, right? Would it be yourself or for parents? But just sometimes, right, doing the same thing over and over again can feel kind of monotonous, or feel like you're kind of, it's like the daily grind again. But sometimes having that reflection time of what does bring me joy, or what am I most grateful for, or right, like, is there a certain quality I want to connect with today? Setting that intention can be really helpful and supportive, just in terms of making more meaning out of, right, your day as a whole.
Wanted to add in stuff, all that, it's nice to have in one spot, really kind of seeing it on one page. Um, One thing that's an opportunity is practicing some when it's more the summer and not necessarily a shift. It just reminds me, we work with our child patients and their families on practicing these throughout the summer, kind of with the thinking that it's easier to learn to ride a bike, when you're not at the very top of the hill. So kind of that same thinking that some of these may be good to practice when we're not like being bombarded with so many stressors. It's hard to implement day in, day out. And making, some pieces of this part of everyday life through our work in the summer as well.
I really like your riding a bike analogy because I think there's a lot of times day to day we're just kind of putting out one fire to the next fire to the next fire, and so really finding that less stressful time, if one exists, hopefully in the summer potentially, to be able to be in a mindset where you can try things out and not have to also be thinking about, oh, and I still have to do XYZ today too. And so that checklist, which is in the chat, also comes from the National Child Traumatic Stress Network's kind of like their pause, nourish, pause, reset, nourish kind of approach to things to encourage well-being. And the cool thing is, via this link on their website, that this is only like a partial page of what they present. They have, it's a sheet with a lot of words on it. But the main thing, which is really neat, is that in each of the pause, rest, nourish categories, there are things that we're already doing with this series. It's about, trying to identify what are you grateful for. It's, trying to kind of, set SMART goals, right? Or more specific, attainable, realistic, time-bound goals. It's all about trying to, carve out that time to recharge your own batteries. So it's neat to see that, other places are promoting the same types of tools, the same types of, with this, a similar purpose to try to minimize distress and improve overall well-being. And so again, I feel like we always come back to this slide, and I'm not going to, go over it in super depth, but just no matter what you call resilience, whether it be grit, your ability to bounce back from things broadly, that your ability to think flexibly about things, that, it really does help kiddos. It helps us, it helps our workforce, in terms of having more of that growth mindset and embracing challenges. And the facet of hardiness that we're going to talk about today is, another kind of within this resilience scope. But, there's a lot of studies out there that actually do connect, more of these observational studies, that, hardiness, or how we measure hardiness, in your ability to, kind of hone in on what you can control, and maybe like a really large project that there might not feel like there's a lot of control over, or that you have, that by what we call being hardy, or having that grit or that ability to bounce back from things, is actually linked to a lot of different health consequences too. So we'll definitely get into that. So again, too, that this resilience idea to bounce back from things, that it really does fold well into that, social emotional curriculum, helps us build in, even during a stressful time, these positive classroom supports. And not only are we supporting our children and families, but we're also broadly supporting our educator workforce. Again, too, in terms of why all this matters, you think about when something happens to our phone, when our battery runs low, everything becomes this myopic viewpoint of we have to charge the phone, no matter, everything else can fall to the wayside. So, just trying to, again, apply that image to yourself in terms of, we don't want our own battery to run low. We don't want ourselves to start glitching out, We want to make sure that we have that self-care is somehow scheduled or somehow embedded within our day or within our week. All right. So over the past month, since we've met last, so beginning of March for us, how have you been able to practice any of the self-care or self-replenishment skills? And it's okay to be honest. Yay, good job, Roxy and Susan. And Anne and Sherry and Brianna. I think just even, right, just trying them once, right? That's just half the battle right there. So for you all who, maybe you did, or you didn't have the time to try it, was there a certain speed bump or barrier that got in the way from doing it? Was there something that was different about this last month that you were able to do it? No wrong answers. Like, how are you able to carve out time for that? Yeah, so Roxy said that consciously deciding to do it at a certain time. So, yep, scheduling. Yeah, say I know it's say for those of you who did schedule, like Roxy, Anne Marie, and C Brown, that right, it's all about how can you make it, you schedule like a doctor's appointment, right? How can we make it become part of our routine if it's this, foreign thing we're trying to insert in? So definitely I commend you all for, it's hard to change schedules. It's hard to add things to schedules, and just really scheduling that time can really, really be helpful. So, and thank you all for sharing too, how you're able to do that. So I'm thinking about hardiness. You don't have to answer yes or no in the chat or out loud, but just kind of think to yourself, right? How would you answer these questions? Are you comfortable taking on a new task, or would you rather just stick to what you know? Are you able to see what is within your control and what is not? Do you see big changes or challenges as opportunities to learn and grow? Do you take your problems head on, or do you try to put them off or hand them off to others? And again, right, these aren't, because you might intrinsically say yes or no to some of these statements, it doesn't, make you a bad person. It doesn't, like there's definitely not a negative connotation to it. It's just more of the more you know about yourself, right? And how you, maybe you're someone who doesn't like to take on new tasks and you just like to stick with what you know. That's okay, but it's also an important fact to know about yourself, that maybe that's what you prefer, because that's how we can try to figure out like what other strategies to implement or what are things to focus on to make, to be able to decrease your distress that maybe you might be experiencing at work or working with others and that kind of stuff. Same thing with, this one. Do you take on problems head on, or do you try to put them off or hand them off to others? And, I think how this kind of comes across in some of my clinical work with individuals is thinking about, maybe something like a new situation might make us feel worried or more anxious sometimes, but thinking when that happens, right, that new situation happens, are you someone who you might have that worried feeling and then you go, use as motivation to approach something, right, and kind of get it done or figure out what you don't know, or just kind of try it and see what happens? Or does kind of that anxiety make you walk away or kind of avoid a situation? And so just, knowing whether you're more of an approach person or more of an avoidant person, again, it doesn't mean, you're a good or bad person. It just means that that's a quality about you. And it can be helpful to know that in terms of, being to identify patterns of, are you someone who it's easier to approach things, or when it gets challenging, are you someone who might withdraw a little bit? Again, just helpful to know about yourself. So hardiness is kind of made up of three components. So there's commitment, control, and challenge is kind of how we define hardiness as a whole. So hardiness is giving your best effort even when it's tough. So there might be a big project looming, right? And even though, it's gonna be tough to get it done, you're kind of, maybe your self mantra is like, you know what, it's really tough, but I'm still going to do the best that I can. So that message of doing the best you can. In order to do the best you can, right, that there might be a big project looming, but you're focusing on only what you can control about that situation. And then again, with that growth mindset, right, that we want to really instill in kiddos, right, trying to approach a situation that, even if there's this big looming project and maybe you can only control one specific part of it. Like maybe you're in charge of putting a document together, and maybe you don't know how to do other parts of it, that, by your willingness to see this challenge as a growth opportunity can really help you still get that project completed. I don't know if Evelyn had any examples specifically about how this could apply.
I think that your slide before really leads into this. I think like you were talking about, each of us have our own style and maybe approach or avoid. It's more the stuckness that's the challenge with that, like when we get so stuck in it. So I think with hardiness, we're all just thinking about, if we see we're kind of getting stuck in that, one way of reacting to all situations, which doesn't fit real well. It's trying to look, and tap into some of the hardiness and the other skills we've talked about, kind of to get unstuck.
Yeah. Yep. Don't want to get stuck. And so with hardiness, right, you think about this ability to kind of bounce back when the going gets tough. When they do observational studies, so say they have someone fill out a questionnaire that measures how hardy they are, right? How much of that kind of commitment control component they have kind of intrinsically within them. And so individuals who score higher on those surveys of hardiness actually have more of the good type of HDL, right? The good type of cholesterol, and have less body fat or lower BMI. Individuals with lower hardiness, so they score less on the hardiness scales, that they tend to have a greater total cholesterol, right? The bad kind of cholesterol we don't want ratio, and tend to have higher cardiovascular disease risk factors. And so it's just really interesting to think about, right? That all these, you think about, hardiness, maybe link it to, right? Your perception of stress, right? And how much in distress you are, and your ability to kind of focus on things that you can control or have that, not get stuck in that moment, is really going to downstream affect your stress level, affect your inflammation level, and therefore kind of affect these different, kind of real life, meaningful, health factors too. And so it kind of makes sense to think about that individuals who maybe score lower on hardiness, right? Meaning that maybe you're stuck more often, maybe, right, that, right, if you're constantly perpetually stuck in this stressed out, kind of overwhelmed state, right, it makes sense that that's going to have bad health effects for you. And all these different facets really do tap into that, right? Trying to reduce your perceived stress, trying to enhance, right, whether it be through healthy lifestyle behaviors, like just, being social, within reason now, or being physically active, or taking time to meal prep, right? Or those kind of things can really all help kind of together, right? So synergistically work towards, lower perceived stress and not being in that stuck point.
This slide reminds me, Stephanie, I think sometimes with hardiness, we kind of get the idea, well, it's just our personality and how we were born, or how we, learn things early in life. But I think what we learned from the research and the work that Turning Point has done is that really, hardiness is a skill just like the other ones we've talked about. That, like all the skills, sometimes it's a little easier or harder for each of us, but that it's still a skill, and you're not just stuck with whatever kind of early experiences that you may have had. You can still really build the hardiness component.
Yeah, definitely. And just that reminds me of too, like how just say if say if the example is playing with blocks, right? If you grew up playing with blocks as a kid, then maybe as an adult or whatever, someone puts blocks in front of you, you go, oh yeah, I can build things with this. I've manipulated these shapes before. I know what to do with this kind of toy, right? But if you never grew up in a household that had blocks, and then all of a sudden there's a situation where there's blocks in front of you, right? How would you know kind of how to use it, right? Or when to use it, or what it's for? So, and I like that kind of idea is how I also approach these different facets, right? That, maybe you had a leg up. Maybe some of these things you learned earlier on versus others, and maybe that's why some of these facets are easier. But just kind of what Evelyn said too, right? Just so say if you never were exposed to the blocks early on, doesn't mean you can't learn how to play with them, right? Or you don't have the potential to try some of these new tools out and see what works. So you're not doomed if you've never been exposed to hardiness. So again, with hardiness, there's 3 parts to it. There's commitment, control, and challenge, right? So it's all about practice, right? How can I practice on focusing on what I can control and, working on smaller goals to be able to complete like a larger task at hand. And kind of the cool thing too about, just like the different resilience factors and that big pretty wheel up front with the slides, right, with all 10 of them listed, that say if you're working on social connectedness, or say if you're working on your own self-replenishment, or just any of the other facets, that those all are going to help improve your hardiness or your hardiness skill. So it's, again, all these facets don't exist in a silo. I think it's really neat how they all kind of cross-talk, and whenever you're working on one or a skill on one, you're also working on that skill within another category. So always something important to keep in mind, that it's not so much you have to feel like you have to pick and choose what skill to work on. It's, any skill, you're going to improve them all. So this is one of the ways in terms of how to help bolster or practice our hardiness. So definitely, right, we want to, if you think about that commitment and control aspect, right, we want to be able to focus on what we can control, even if it's a small portion of this larger task, right, be able to kind of acknowledge, okay, what's within my control? Is it just how I respond to a situation? Is it actually working on a physical document? Is it, right, like whatever this small task might be. But say if you're presented, say if Evelyn said, hey, Steph, I want you to do X, to write this paper. And if I get stuck, right, or have this more emotional mind happened, and I start, I feel overwhelmed, stressed out, and I start down the path of negative self-talk, right, I'm not going to be able to recognize, okay, it's a big, writing a paper is a big task, Evelyn, but, maybe if I start off on maybe this one portion, or looking up what the term means or what the topic is that she wants me to write about. Right, that if you stay in this overwhelmed, stuck position and start down the path of negative self-talk, you won't be able to rationally think about, okay, what's the next step? What can I control in the situation to actually make some positive progress towards something, or just be able to do the best that I can in that situation. So first, right, you want to identify if the situation is overwhelming. And next, right, just it's okay to feel overwhelmed, but we don't want to start down the path of the negative self-talk or judging, my thoughts of saying I don't know anything about it, right? Or not being able to do anything productive with it. And so this little like person cutout really just focuses on, right, that, acknowledging the emotion, overwhelmed, angry, right, kind of surprised, whatever it is, not passing judgment on that emotion, just kind of letting it sit. And being able to tell yourself like, wow, I do feel really shocked that Evelyn told me to write a paper overnight about whatever. And this is going to be really hard for me, but it's okay to feel shocked about it, right? Or feel really overwhelmed by it. And then also too, sometimes it's hard for us, or especially kids, to kind of describe like what the emotion is that we're feeling, right? You might just feel, I feel a certain way and I don't know what's going on. So, just thinking about like physiologically, how can that manifest, right? Sometimes we feel anger in our jaw and our face, right? Because we're clenching our jaw so tight, we end up with a headache. Or, is sadness kind of, is it more like a heaviness in the chest? Is fear more felt in our stomach? I think, don't remember exactly, maybe Evelyn can help me out, but I know like with little kids, I want to say more like, feeling down, that can be more of like a tummy ache kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think, butterflies in your tummy, or, if you have a big test, or, a surprise test even, then just kind of how do you bring yourself back into the moment, acknowledging the emotion, and
Yeah.
then moving forward.
Yeah,
I
sometimes
think what we hear a lot, just like you said, it's sometimes just breaking it down. If it seems like this big overwhelming piece, like what's a first step?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And, I know as adults, it's still hard for us, right, to remember to break stuff down, but it's just neat to think about, being in the role where you're interacting with kids, that you get to really be that, for better or for worse, but you get the opportunity to be that role model and, kind of practice slowing things down and breaking it down for them, or kind of just helping them even identify, right? Like, well, how do you feel, right? It's like maybe there's more butterflies in your tummy, and, trying to map that onto an emotion. Because the cool thing with that is that you're actually helping them build the language so they can help describe it, whether it be to peers, to themselves, to family, to other educators, right? Kind of what's internally going on with them, rather than just having a meltdown and just feeling overwhelmed. So another thing that we can do is called situational reconstruction. And so this, I know this comes up a lot in like perfectionism or some of the other facets that we talked about, but it's all about how to kind of reframe your mindset about an issue. So first, like this kind of goes hand in hand with the naming emotions and support of self-talk, but right, think about this, a stressful situation. And so maybe you feel overwhelmed about, the task at hand. And so visualize, right, kind of see yourself like, how could the situation get better? It's like, oh, if I write the introduction to the paper, if I Google what the topic is, right, kind of visualize what steps could I take? And then, right, so after you kind of visualize yourself kind of crossing that finish line, or kind of, envisioning the steps kind of come together, think about, right, like what's like one thing that you can do to try to improve the chances of this task coming together. And then, knowing like, oh, if I'm writing a paper with like 10 other people, or if I'm doing some kind of project with other kids, maybe I'm just in charge of this one piece, right? But trying to focus on that one piece and not worrying about what everyone else is doing. And another one is called compensatory self-improvement. So again, focusing on, right, just that one piece of the puzzle. What's the one part of the puzzle that you can do something about, or that's within your control? Maybe it's just, being that supportive person for someone. Maybe you're just saying like, yeah, like you have the skills, you got this, right? We all need that positive reinforcement sometimes. Maybe it's just validation, right? Someone checking in like, hey, am I doing this correctly? Yes, no, right? So this can really come in different kinds of ways. But again, it's just the overarching theme, right? Is that you're going to, in the situation's overwhelming, there's a large task at hand, trying to, choose smart goals, or like small, small, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound goals, right? So say if the project is write a paper, and I go, okay, it's too overwhelming of a task to do, then I'm going to instead say, okay, today I'm going to look up the topic in Google, right? So I'm making it time bound. I'm saying specifically what I'm going to do, and I can measure it, meaning, okay, by the end of today, I'm going to look up this topic in Google. And then at the end of the day, I can be able to check off, did I do it or not, right? So you're trying to gain momentum by these small, achieving small positive goals that are going to then get you to that end result. So all different ways to kind of approach the same thing, right? How can we control the one, or kind of work on the one thing that we can control and build off positive momentum from that, and not slip into that, I'm overwhelmed, I suck at life, everything's horrible, I can't do anything kind of mindset. Because reality is always kinder than we think it is. All right, so again, too, right, hardiness can be improved like working on self-calming, right, or self-replenishment, or even social support. These all are things that are going to help reinforce and boost one's, hardiness skill. And again, right, these facets are not existing within silos. I think it's kind of neat and self-assuring to know that, okay, like if I'm taking my precious time, right, I'm going to schedule in something for hardiness, or for self-calming, or for self-replenishment. That's still doing good in terms of the other skills. I'm not losing ground on the other skills. If anything, it's just going to help reinforce and help bolster those other skills. And again, too, whether it be optimism, hope, right, having that more positive mindset, hardiness, that, just some ideas that we talked about last time. And I think they're definitely still relevant today, right? But using more of that project-based learning, having kids even practice with each other, like, wow, like I feel really overwhelmed about getting this project done. I feel, angry. I feel overwhelmed about this. And, kind of walking them through that modeling of like, oh, and this is one, part of that puzzle that you can start to work on. to get the overall task done. Definitely too, right? Just that now I know there's different hybrid learning environments. There's, completely virtual learning environments. Some people are fully in person, but just thinking about, right, like how can we try to combat isolation, given just kind of how, spread out we are virtually, kind of what's going on. And so finding ways, right, that just even, focus on some of those the social connectedness facet, how that can still help, bolster that hardiness facet as well. And it's pretty cool to think about that, right? That all these different techniques that you've learned so far, like grounding, breathing, right? Practicing gratitude, like the form that we shared at the beginning, like that, the practice, repeat, and nourish, I think it's called, that, right, saying that intention to start your day or your class, or, focusing on like, what's something that I'm grateful for, right? That those are all powerful things to kind of set us up for that positive mindset or more of that approach and not being stuck in an overwhelming situation. So I think it's just neat to reflect back and think about all the different, skills that you've learned, right? Whether or not you've had time to practice them, but you have lots of skills that are in your toolbox waiting to be used.
I think you've taught us, Stephanie, that about how not we're going to have an affinity for some of these skills more than others. I think hardiness is sometimes kind of a nice skill for people who really like the facts. They like data, and I know with my own kids, their schools really emphasize kind of the quality improvement type idea, and like plan, do, study, act cycles, and some of those things. Some of the language is a little bit different. So I'm not sure if it's the same with other educators and school personnel that we have joining today. But I think, if you have someone kind of in that really likes data, both for themselves and others, the idea that, okay, I'm gathering some data with hardiness, like we were talking about, kind of, getting kind of what's being done now, and then what kind of small steps to help improve, and kind of taking that neutral standpoint that, well, I'm not judging when I have challenges. It's just that's all part of that cycle, and it's all about getting the data that helps me do better the next time. So again, so hardiness may be a fit for some folks who are a little bit more on that I love data side.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone have questions or I guess any kind of suggestions about how you think this could be applied in the classroom or in your situation? Or things that you're already doing, you're like, hey, I'm already doing that. Or do you want to think
I'll
about?
just say, everyone on here, I give yourself a pat on the back because you really did what we asked, scheduling to come to the resilience presentation. That sure counts too. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of it's a whole piece of that. I know you're doing many other things, but, finding like a piece like this that, I was able to carve out time today.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something, just like you're saying, Evelyn, that we tend to overlook, right? But it's like, you're already doing it. You scheduled time for yourself. This is the one thing that you can't control, right? Whether or not you're going to attend, the echo session today. So I think it's just, yeah, that's something that we tend to dismiss, but because our brains are Teflon towards anything positive, right? But I think it's an important thing to remember. I got some good things in the chat too. So Brenna was saying zones of regulation has a lesson about inner coach and inner critic. We do sometimes look at positive and negative self-talk. I love that you all do that. That's neat. I really like it as like a coach versus a critic too, kind of visual. That's neat. One of my schools did self-care professional development for teachers. As part of it, provided a list of affirmations, then had everyone choose to use as a daily affirmation. I like that too. Yeah, those are neat. And thank you for sharing. So again, right, just remember to check in with yourself. I think just the more we can check in with ourselves, right, and have that kind of internal dialogue of, hey, how am I doing? Is my battery running down? Is it, do I need a quick charge? I think that can be really helpful. Just, again, there's no kind of right or wrong battery level, but just be able to reflect and kind of know about yourself, like how you're feeling and what things you could employ or kind of, start using to try to build that power back up, right, to get that charge going before we start glitching like our phones do and they have like 5% battery level left. Again, you already know what your role is, but just can't stress enough how much just, even with like how at your place you have the inner coach and inner critic, right? Just by going, taking time to go through that type of language, right? You're really modeling these types of skills for kiddos and for ourselves or our own peers. So it's just really, really neat. Okay, so think about the hardiness skills. If you're being completely honest, we want you to be honest. So until we meet next time, are you planning on trying the skills or planning on trying some of the skills at least once? Not sure if you'll have time or not planning these skills. Yay. Glad to hear that you're planning on trying something. Again, right, life comes up, things come up, but just like some of you wrote too, that just that being able to schedule something, right, or having something in the books can be super helpful just to make sure we don't just let it go to the wayside. Again, too, there's other telehealth resources out there, and the link to the National Childhood Stress Network. They also have a list of different apps too, COVID coaches on it, virtual hope box, right? There's lots of apps out there, lots of different resources. You all have a wealth of resources too, and so we'd be definitely happy to share anything that you found helpful or not so helpful. I think just that kind of feedback to the group can be super helpful in terms of triaging what might work, what might not work. And lastly, too, no have tos, but say if you want to kind of add this as part of your schedule to help reinforce, right, what all the good that you're already doing, or if you want to try out some other tips or skills, or need someone to help hold you accountable to trying these things out, or if you want a smaller group to be able to share amongst yourselves what's working, what's not working. All of the Tuesdays from 12 to 1 that we're not meeting for ECHO, that I'm definitely available to meet with you all from 12 to 1. And we can definitely send out a calendar invite for you. But the Zoom link that's not going to change is in the slides as well. And even if you can't join for the full hour, you're more than welcome to kind of pop in whenever you can. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to email, text in the chat, and I'd be more than happy to answer that. But thank you all for coming today. Definitely want to either give you these 20 minutes back, or if you all have anything that you want to make sure you share. If there's other individuals who can't make this meeting time who want to be involved in the resilience huddles or other resilience echoes, definitely let us know. We'd be more than happy to share the link information with them too. I don't know if Evelyn or Robert had anything else that we want to make sure we announce.
No,
Enjoy
we're
the
excited.
sunshine.
Yeah, we're excited to see everyone next month, and hope people, if they have the time and availability, will take Stephanie up on the opportunity to work one-on-one if they have any areas or want to adapt some of these things for work in their classroom or other places. So I hope everybody has a great rest of their week, and we'll see everyone again soon. Evelyn, did you have anything else?
Just enjoy the sunshine. I hope everybody has a wonderful day.